Don't want to make the poor guy wait this time. All right. I think what we'll do is we'll do it in a few steps. The first step is we'll jump over to GitHub. Every week we'll create a new part. So in order to do that, we should make sure that the code we did the week prior is pushed and ready to go. So let's start by opening up our terminals so that we have them open. And make sure you navigate to where we've been working on our blog project. At least the nice convenience thing is that we're working in the same project for this whole course. So it's always the same folder, which is pretty cool. However, I changed where my folder location is. So give me 1 second and I'll
Say good luck to you, sir.
I say good luck to me too because I have a funny feeling my credentials have switched back over to Mintent, so that's going to be annoying. I'll find out in 1 second here if I do a git pull. Oh, no, that's good. Cool. All right, once you've switched over, do a git pull just to make sure that you've got any changes you have. You should be on part 2, the branch. If you're not on part 2, there's a couple of ways that we can check to make sure we even actually have a part 2 branch, because you might not, right? So we don't want to go barking up the wrong tree. The way we can, got it, because it's a branch. Anyways, that was totally accidental. So if you type in git branch, it will actually git fetch first. Do a git fetch. That will actually reach up to your remote and pull down any information about the remote that we need locally. That's the first step. The second step is git branch. And that should list what branches are available to you. So I have a part 2 and a master. So I'm missing my part 1, but I don't care. That's fine. Okay? That's fine, as long as you have a master. Okay. So if that's the case, then, and you want to know which branch you're on, and you don't currently know which branch you're on, you can do git status. Git status, the first piece, it will tell you which branch you're on. The next pieces will tell you if you have any files that haven't been committed yet. Okay? And chances are, if you've done the lesson, I don't think we actually did a commit at the end of the lesson, so chances are you have files that aren't committed yet. Right? So to commit the files, we'll do it in just one blanket command so that we just take them and commit them all in one go. We're not going to do them one by one. So the way we do that, we do a git add and a dot. The dot basically means everything. We're just going to do everything in this current folder. Hit enter. It doesn't give you any information that something went wrong or something is good. Just assume that everything's a-okay. The next step is if we do git commit -m and then the message committing part 2 and hit enter. It's going to take all of those changes we did and that we just staged, and it's going to commit them. Once they're committed, they're fine. They're locally available to you, and we've done the local bit. But we often want to take our changes that we've done locally and actually move those up to, the World Wide Web, right? So let's put them into GitHub. And the way we do that, we have to do a push, right? So we've already done a pull, so now we're going to do a push. We just do git push, hit enter. It's going to take those changes, and it's going to push them up. Now ignore my error. My error is because my credentials, like I said to Virginia, are not correct. Give me 2 seconds. This is like literally the easiest way for me to do this as opposed to doing it through the command line tool. There we go. Now I can run that again, and it should say everything's up to date for me because I don't have any changes to push. Yours, when you push, it will probably say remote, and it will tell you different things it's doing. It will compress it, it will move it, and then it will unpack it once it's up there. So once all that is complete, now we're ready to actually merge part 2 into master and then do that push. So now master will be a complete version of our app at this current point. So the way we do that is we're going to first check out master by doing git checkout master. If you're already on master, you don't need to do that, right? And if you don't have a part 2 branch, then don't follow along with this part, right? But pay attention to it, just don't bother doing it, okay? I'm going to, it's not Command K, is it Control L? Yeah, Control L, cool. That way I can scroll back if I need to. All right, I'm gonna merge my part 2 into master, but before I do that, I always pull master first. That way I guarantee that my local version of master is identical to to the master version that is currently in GitHub. They need to be identical. So I do a pull. Okay? Looks like I had a whole whack of changes sitting up there. Okay.
If you do a pull on master and it says already up to date,
You're good. Yeah, if it says already up to date, that means your master remote and your master local are exactly the same. Which is good, right? Now I'm ready to merge in part 2, so I do a git merge and the name of the branch, which my name of the branch is part 2. If you don't remember, do a git branch first so that you can find out what the name of your branch is. And once I've done that, I'm going to hit enter. And it turns out that part 2 doesn't add any extra to my master, but yours might. I'm doing git merge part 2. Do you have a branch called part 2? Yeah, as long as you have a branch part 2, then you can do a git merge with part 2. Are you on master branch though, Angelina? Are you on the master branch? Like, did you do git checkout master? You don't know? We need to do a git checkout master first. Yeah. So that we're on the master branch. Checkout. Yeah. CHECKOUT. No, it's one word. Yeah, checkout. Daniel, do you mind giving her a hand? Just because you're right there and you know exactly what to do.
My branch is up to date with the region master.
Oh, okay. Daniel will give you a hand. And then the last step, the absolute last step, is now our local is completely up to date. It's happy. We've merged part 2 into master. But again, only local looks like that. If we want remote to look like that, we need to push. Exactly. So it's just git push, and then that will actually push those changes directly up to GitHub. So git push. And you'll get everything up to date if everything is fine. Otherwise, you'll see remote and it do a bunch of stuff and shove it up. And that's it, right? Not quite. We're going to jump over to github.com, right? Go ahead and make sure you've logged into github.com so that you can see your repositories. Make sure you select this repository that we're working in. So github.com. For some reason, I can see Wes's face. I don't know why. Oh, he's following me. That's why I can see Wes's face. So I'm going to switch over to my repository. So there it is. And I'm going to create a new branch. So you click the branch down arrow thingy. And then create a new branch called part 3. And somebody asked me, oh, it was Dante actually that asked me, why we're actually not just pushing to the same branch each week and leaving it like that. The only reason, it doesn't matter. Like if you don't want to keep part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, that's fine, and you just want to push to master every time, go ahead. But I recommend getting into this habit because 1, it teaches you how to create branches and use them as a separate thing, and then put that branch into your master when you're done, which is a very common workflow when you work in the industry, as opposed to always just pushing to master, right? So it's a good thing to get in like an idea of. The other thing it does is it gives you a physical branch that contains that version of our application in time, right? So when you go to part 1, you can see the differences between what you did in part 1 versus what you did in part 8, right? You can see how your app actually progressed. So I kind of recommend doing it this way, but again, it is completely up to you. You're not going to lose marks for not having a part 3 branch. So we're going to create a new one. I'm going to click this little arrow that shows the branch. And I'm going to type in part-03. And then I'm going to click the create part 3 button. And what that does is it actually takes master and it creates a new branch and clones master into the new branch. So whatever state master is at currently will be the state that part 3 starts at. I'm going to do that. Cool, we've got part 3. The next step is to jump back into our terminal. do a git fetch so that we pull down any branches or any changes that are sitting in remote. And then I want to check out part 3. So I do a git checkout part 3. And now I'm ready to work. It only took 12 minutes to get to that state. I mean, once you do this enough, you'll do this in 3 seconds, right? And usually if you're doing this in the industry, you'll be working on that branch for a while before you change over. Yeah, so master is usually a representation of your production, and then your other branches usually have our features. So at G-Shift, we have a master branch, and we have, well, now I'm the dedicated person, but we usually have one person that's allowed to push the master branch, just because G-Shift is a massive conglomerate of like 1 million files, and it can be bad if somebody breaks it. So we have another branch called develop that we also use. So usually everybody pushes into develop, and then whoever's doing the pull request stuff will merge develop to master. Otherwise, when you're working on a feature, you create a branch with the feature name, and you only work in the feature branch. That's it. Usually the feature branch is named after the feature you're doing. That's what you're supposed to do. But Connor and Ilya like to make up crazy names, and yeah, it gets kind of silly sometimes. But anyways, but that's the idea. So you have a feature branch, you have a development branch, and you have a master branch. Some industries, like our app is too big to have a staging server. It would cost us a fortune. Like our Amazon bill is $8,000 a month. So for us to have, that's down from 14 actually. We're saving $6,000. But in order for us to have a staging server, it would have to mimic the development or the production server. So you can imagine that's double our bill, right? In order to run the app in 2 locations. But that being said, be aware, because a lot of companies do run that way. They run with a development, which is your local machine, staging, which is a replication of production, and then production is where the end product goes, right? So that's usually the way that goes. It's like the little piece that I wish the college actually had a class dedicated to teach you. Like, here's what you will see, these type of environments, and then they teach you those environments. I always thought that would be a cool class, and I'd love to teach that class. But all right, cool. So we're going to talk about what we're going to do today. Today's going to be fun. Today we're going to do database stuff. And you guys have used MySQL, right? And probably MS SQL as well, because you did at ASP.NET, yeah? But I mean, like, SQL is SQL is SQL is SQL, right? It only really becomes different when you actually get into the more finer things of the database, but SQL is SQL is SQL is SQL. They're all relational databases. But today we're actually going to do something that is a little different. Now, a lot of people like to say Mongo isn't a relational database, but it has relationships. You can do relational things with it. So I like to say that it's a NoSQL database. So instead of using SQL querying, you're using non-SQL querying, right? It's actually known as a document storage database. So instead of storing lines and rows of records, you're actually storing documents, little JSON documents. And you just shove them in. But the cool thing is you can query those JSON documents. The big difference between when you work with, actually I'll show you this because it just makes sense. We'll switch over to the desktop here where I have my notes. And I will zoom in a little. There we go. All right, SQL versus NoSQL. So like SQL and NoSQL, there are only 2 types of databases. SQL breaks down into several different types of databases, and then there's also flavors of those databases. Like MySQL has the Oracle version that you have to pay for, and it's super expensive, but then they have MariaDB, and then they also have their forked version that they created a while back before Oracle actually acquired them. There's PostgreSQL, which we use where I work, mostly because we also have JSON objects inside there, and we need to be able to query on them, and it supports that. There's also MS SQL, right, which is Microsoft's flavor, which also integrates quite heavily with Access. There's a lot of different types of SQLs. There's also just SQL, like straight up SQL that you can download as well and also utilize, which is just a generic SQL database. And there's SQLite, right? So those are the different flavors there. But then we also have document storage databases like Mongo. Everybody's kind of heard of Mongo. Anybody not heard of Mongo before? Yeah, so everybody's heard of Mongo, but there's also another one called Dynamo, which I have a personal hatred for, but it exists. What's that? It's bad. It's really super difficult to query, but it's Amazon's like go-to because it's super super fast. It's like probably one of the fastest document storage databases there are. And then there's Hootop, which is like it's a file storage. So think of it more like you have images and audio files and like texts and stuff like that and all these different type of files, right? And what it does is it actually indexes them so they're searchable. And it's really cool, but super expensive and not something you'll likely come across unless you're working in a large company, like a very large company. For the most part, you'll probably see relational databases and Mongo because Mongo's become quite big and quite popular. So the great thing about NoSQL databases, when we think of relational databases, we usually think of hierarchical data, right? So the idea is that this data has some sort of relationship with this data. SQL is really good for rigidity, right? So if I have something that is rigid, that it's not data that's really going to change, it's always going to kind of stay the same, then SQL is very good for that. It's also good as long as every single record maintains the same data points, right? So like it's not like your data is not going to change. It's more like all of the data records inside the database, if it does change, will all get the same change, right? Because it's all applicable. And that's fine. Like if I'm a person who owns a bank account, right? I have a bank account and my bank account is a checking account. Well, I can tell you right now, the checking account will have an account number, it will have a balance, and then it will have it might have list of options that I have available to it, right? That's very good for relational databases because two checking accounts aren't going to be different. They follow the same pattern as long as it's the same type of plan, right? Non-relational databases or NoSQL databases, the big thing about them is they're working with data that is more dynamic and fluid, right? So it's not rigid, which means I have a user that has a first name, last name, but then I have a user that has a first name and a middle name and a last name, and then I have a user who has only a first name, like Madonna or Cher or something, right? And it doesn't matter. I don't actually need to add their middle name and their last name into the database because it's data that I don't require, and Mongo supports that. It's very fluid, right? And if I try to access those properties and they aren't set, it doesn't blow up. It just tells me they're not there. They're just undefined. So they're just blank values. So I get the ability to constantly dynamically change my database as I choose to or as I see fit without being restricted to SQL's rigidity. The other thing about SQL, anytime we want to add new information, new tables, thinking in Mongo, new tables into our database, we have to actually go through the whole process of running SQL commands to actually create the table and add it in and so on and so forth. Whereas Mongo actually supports implicit additions. So when you actually want to add in a new table, you just create a new record in this new table and it immediately creates the table and creates the record for you. You don't need to run SQL and create a table. You don't even need to run SQL and create a database. You just need to tell it where the database is going to be and the database will immediately be created with the collection, with the data. So it's really cool because you're not stuck to this whole process of needing a developer or a DevOps to actually go ahead and create all the actual tables for you so that they're ready for you to go ahead and add the data. You just start plugging away at it as you choose. So as a developer, it's very, very fast to develop it because you're not relying on another person, right? So I find SQL databases, to me, it's not an option of which one should I use. I feel that it's the right tool for the right job. Right? So it's not an issue of, well, I'm only ever going to use SQL databases. So there are people out there like that. And there's people out there like that that are like, I'm only ever going to use Mongo, because that doesn't really work. You want one that will actually complete the job correctly in the most efficient manner, right? And there's times where SQL makes a lot of sense, especially when you're dealing with things like organizational hierarchies or stuff like that, where it actually is applicable. Whereas Mongo makes sense more in dynamic data, like very fluid data that we would have. You can think of that too, like even when you work with like catalogs, I would say this is one of the best places for something like Mongo is in e-commerce. When you think of products in a catalog, like if you think about Best Buy, for example, you can buy a TV, right? And you think about the features that a TV has. It has screen size, it has It's different features, whether it's HDR, whether it's 1080p, 4K, is it OLED, is it LCD, right? And from TV to TV, those features will generally stay the same. But what about when we start to introduce a different product, like, I don't know, a telephone, right? That doesn't have the same features. You don't find HDR on your telephone. That's not a thing, right? So the product has changed, right? It's not exactly the same thing. And Mongo makes that very simple to work with because you just take what you think your telephone's going to look like, what the data structure for that telephone would look like, and you dump it into the database. And then things that are similar, like price, right? SKU, things like that that are similar, they still line up, but then things like specifications, features, stuff like that can be different and dynamic, and you can support that differently and dynamically, which is pretty cool. All right, so we're actually going to play with Mongo quite a bit today. And this is one class that I find kind of moves a little slow just because we have to actually do some installations. Well, not so much installations, we have to sign up. We have to sign up to a Mongo provider. We're going to wind up using Mongo Atlas, which is a free provider. It doesn't require a credit card or anything like that. It's absolutely free. We could do it through Heroku, but then you would need a credit card in order to do it. Not that it will bill you, you need it to verify your age and everything else. So we're just going to make this simple by doing it that way. But before we do that, I'd like to make some changes to our home page. I did a little bit of styling, and I mean a very little bit of styling. And we're going to actually go ahead and add that stuff now. So in order to do that, we are going to add something called an asset pipeline. So if you want to open up your code inside your Visual Studio Code or whatever IDE it is that you're using. All right, I'm going to open up my project. Projects. Thursday. Bless you. Open. Now I did have some issues where I had actually added code in here accidentally and didn't realize that. I want the proper Thursday. Just give me 1 second. I'm just going to grab the actual Thursday where we ended off properly. Nope. Where did I put that silly blog? Oh, here it is. There we go. Okay, so now that's going to look like Thursday from last week. Okay, so the first thing I'm actually going to do, I'm going to go quickly back to my terminal. Oh, sorry. There you go. We're going to open up into our terminal, and we're going to run npm install, which will install our node modules, because I know many of you probably had them deleted when you pushed them to Git the original time. So we just do npm install. That's going to go through and actually install our node modules for us. And incidentally, there is a shortcut as well, which is npm I. I is short for install, and that will actually work at installing for you as well. I think I mentioned that before, though. Cool. So once you've done that, all of your node modules will be there. If you open your project inside your IDE, you should see your node modules folder at the top, just underneath controllers, likely. Unless it's ordered by alphabet or whatever. No, actually, if your node modules is there and you run npm install, it will just install. It won't and replace whatever files are in there. Yeah. If they don't need to be replaced and they're already there, I'll just skip them. So it'll be quicker than it was the original time. So no, it's not going to break anything by reinstalling. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to add something called an asset pipeline to our application. And what the asset pipeline's responsibility is it will deliver our assets being our style sheets like CSS, our JavaScript, like our static JavaScript. Say we want a date picker or something like that, right? So it will deliver those for us. And our images, right? And the reason why we're going to use an asset pipeline is because if we ever decide in the future we want to gzip our JavaScript, transpile our CSS, and minify and compress our images, the asset pipeline actually makes that a lot simpler for us because it will actually go through, do those processes, and then deliver the final output to the user. Interestingly enough, all of our assets is going to go into a directory called assets, and then under their respective folders, style sheets, JavaScripts, and images. However, when the user goes to attempt to access those style sheets or JavaScript or images, they're going to do it from paths that we're going to create, routes that we're actually going to create. We're going to create a CSS route to point to the style sheets folder, an images folder to point to the images folder, so it's one-to-one. And then for the JavaScript folder, we'll point to /js, which will point to the JavaScript folder. Okay? So in order to do that, we're going to create a new folder first at the root of our application. And we're going to call it assets. And then inside that folder, we're going to create 3 folders. The first folder, we'll create images. The second folder will be style sheets. And then the third and final folder will be JavaScripts with an S, which I think is incorrect grammar because I think JavaScript is plural and singular, but I might be wrong. We're going to create one more file as well. Underneath the style sheets, we're going to create a file in there, and it's going to be called styles.css. So you have 3 folders and 1 file. Yeah, go for it. Images, JavaScripts, and style sheets. I don't actually know how to use them. No, I don't know how to use them. I've never been able to really figure them out. I think you had to help me in the last class too. I couldn't figure them out. Styles.css. Curiosity? Yep. That is basically saying it's unstaged. Or actually, it's saying it's untracked, which means I haven't actually staged the file. So my VS Code has the Git module installed. So it will actually tell me what files have been modified and what files are untracked or need committing and stuff, and it kind of gives you that information. Like if you notice beside assets, there's a little green dot. That little green dot is telling me that's a new folder that's been created and hasn't been put into the GitHub repo, or to the Git repo. Okay, so I've moved my entire lesson plan structure up to a web-based application. And the reason why I did that is because I found out that when you try to copy and paste from the PDF, it's an absolute nightmare. So this is now much, much simpler to work with. You can copy and paste from it very easily. And I also did it, the biggest reason why I did it is because I have an image on here that I want you to use. You don't have to. You can use your own image if you choose to. But I have an image on here I want you to use, and I want you to be able to get it without having to go to Unsplash and go download it yourselves. You can just right-click and choose to save it directly from the application. So inside, switch over. Ta-da! Inside here, you can see the code and stuff. Don't worry about that quite yet. So you can find this on Blackboard under the weekly folder for week 4. You'll see a link there that says Lesson 4 Lesson Plan. And when you click it, it will take you to this application. Once you get there, if I start at the top, if you scroll down just a little bit where it says the code, you will see one that starts with asset style sheets, styles.css. We're going to copy the styles that are inside the code block. You can highlight it and hit Control-C or Command-C if you're on Windows or on Mac. Or right-click and copy if you're over the age of 60. I have to actually navigate there on my laptop because I obviously can't copy back and forth from this ridiculous machine. All right, so once you've copied that, copy, you are going to jump over to your IDE. You're going to go to the styles.css page, and you're going to paste it. And then you're going to save it. What's that?
I would not guess that.
Asset style sheet, right?
Assets, style sheets, styles.css. Yeah. So now we have our styles in there, and our styles are actually not being applied to our application because we haven't included our style sheet yet. We still need to actually include it. But in order to do that, we need to actually register this path with our application. But let's do one more copy job before we actually do that. If you scroll down a little bit further, just underneath that style sheet, you will see a big image. Right-click on the big image, choose to save the image as, and we're going to drop that into the images directory in our assets folder. So that's going to go into assets, images, and that's where you're going to save it. Make sure it says background.jpg and not background1 or anything like that. It should just be background.jpg. And don't worry, I didn't like plagiarize or copy or anything. This is from Unsplash, probably one of the most fantastic stock sites for free stock images. What's that?
Pixels.
I just found about, that's funny that you say that. I literally just discovered Pexels yesterday.
Oh.
I was helping this well, I was helping the graphic designer with her Mac because she was having issues. She had it written on a post-it note beside it. I was like, what the heck's Pexels? And then, yeah. And she didn't know about Unsplash, so it was a win-win. And then I do want to do one more thing. You know what? Let's copy the Pug page as well while we're at it. So scroll up a little bit, just above the style sheets. There's the code for the Pug page. Just highlight it, copy it. And where are we going to find that page, Mo?
I'll tell you. Plug home.
Pug home. Yeah, home Pug. All right, so if you go back to your IDE, go to your views folder, go to pages and home.pug. I'm just going to do Command A, Command V, and save. And then it's in there.
Potato.
Potato. Yeah. Because Pug Home is totally like potato. All right, cool. So an asset pipeline is usually a directory structure that is not public. They usually are not public. We don't make those public. We make a public folder public, and then we pipe everything through the public folder that we want them to actually have access to. And the reason why we do that is because then we can actually make assets that are specific to like user roles, for example. So if I have a user that's logged in, they get delivered a different set of assets that are specific to them, right? Or if I have a user that's an administrator, I might deliver them a completely different JavaScript file than I would deliver to anybody else. And because they're sitting in the assets directory and the assets directory is not public, I don't have to worry about people figuring out some monkey way to get there and actually grab that content, right? Because it's completely private to us and not to them at all, which is cool. So using an asset pipeline is really handy. Plus, you're going to see it in almost every type of framework you'd ever work with. You'll be working with asset pipelines. The pipeline, like I said, also adds extra functionality like compression, minification, uglification, optimization, transpiling, etc. So any type of thing you would do with JavaScript, CSS, or images, or any other asset that you might have, you can actually build little scripts that run those before they actually wind up getting delivered to the end user. So that will be immediately done when an asset is accessed. Sometimes it's done as an intermediary step where you do like a build process before you give it to the user. Like when you go to upload your app will actually go through and build those assets for you immediately and then dump them into a public folder. There's a lot of different ways that this happens. In order to create an asset pipeline in our Node application, we're going to need to modify our very infamous file app.js. So let's go ahead and open up app.js. And we're going to modify this file. We're going to add 3 new lines right underneath our app.setViewEnginePug. So you'll remember last week we created a views path and we loaded in our engine, right? That will actually transpile pug files into HTML for us. So underneath that, we're going to actually use app.use, which registers a module to our application. And this will seem fairly familiar because it looks just like setting routes. It's /CSS. And then we give it the callback that we want it to execute. But this is actually pretty simple. It's express.static. And that's a actual function call that returns back a callback. And inside there, we're going to put in assets. We're going to put in the path for where that's located in the assets directory. So asset style sheets for the first one. So app.use has not changed how it works. It's working the same way as it would normally. It's just that express.static, that function call, is actually going to return a callback definition. And then app.use will call that callback definition. And that's how we kind of get away with being able to transpile and all that too, because we could put more logic in there if we wanted to. Okay, I'm going to duplicate that 2 more times because the next 2 are going to look roughly similar. The second one I'm going to call JS, and I'm going to point it at assets JavaScripts. And then the third one I'm going to call images, and I'm going to point it at assets images. And I'm going to save that. So all this has done is actually taken the assets folder, created basically routes to where those assets are located that can be publicly accessed by the user when they access our app. Now, if we were to boot up our app, which we might as well just to make sure everything is still running, let's jump over to iTerm or your PowerShell or whatever it is you're using. And just out of curiosity, how many of you got NodeMon working or NodeDaemon working? A couple of you? Okay. So for those of you that have NodeDaemon, go ahead and run NodeDaemon. For those of you that don't, you're going to need to run npm start. So npm start will actually start your application for you. Those of you with NodeDaemon, run NodeDaemon. For those of you that don't know the benefits of NodeDaemon, with Express apps, we actually have to, every time we make a change, we have to restart the thing. So we have to jump back over to the terminal, hit Control-C to kill it, hit npm start, and restart it every time we make a change. Whereas NodeDaemon, every time we make a change, it will restart itself. So we don't have to worry about it. It's a little bit quicker and easier for us to work. If you want to install NodeDaemon, you have to do npm install NodeDaemon-g, and you install it at the global level. I think some of you actually had difficulties doing that due to permissions. If you're on Windows, you can likely get past that by opening up your command prompt with administrator access. And that might help you out. Anyways, long story short, let's jump over to our browsers, localhost, :4000, enter, and got an error. Because I got block variables. And that's because we actually need to make some changes in our main.pug where I'm using these block globals up here but haven't defined them in the main.pug yet. So we're going to flip over to main.pug, and I'm actually going to cheat. Inside VS Code, I can switch between files. I press Command P, and then I can type the name of the file up here, and it actually gives me a suggestion and I can quickly switch. Now, it's Command P on Mac. I believe it's Control P. Yeah, Control P on Windows, and you can do the same thing. And that works not only in VS Code, but that also works in Sublime as well. So sure enough, yeah, I'm missing some stuff. One of the pieces I'm missing is this block globals at the very top. Block globals, just like the block content, will actually take information that I've put inside my home.pug or contact.pug or about.pug and plug it into this spot. Just the same as we did with block content. Now, once you've actually done that, you should be able to jump over to your browser, refresh, and you should see the change. It should work now. Likely. I might be lying. No, it's working. But you'll notice that it looks very boring.
What is the picture?
Exactly. It looks very boring. So in order for the picture to come up, in order for us to actually have a really nice looking page, dare we say sexy page, we need to actually add our style sheets in. So the problem is right now is if you were to right click and look at the page source, you'll notice that in our head, we don't actually have our style sheet listed. And that's the way we list external style sheets. Now, all of you took HTML and CSS, so you'll remember that in order to take an external style sheet and get it to apply to your HTML page, you need to include it into your HTML. And it's no different with the Express app. We need to do exactly the same thing. It's not automatically assumed. It's not going to dump it in for us. So the way we do that is jump over to your IDE, make sure you're in main.pug, and we're going to add a line. And it literally doesn't matter where you add the line in the head. I'm just, I don't know, a little bit OCD, and I like to add it as like my first thing over my title. And it goes link, href equals, and then the path that I'm working with, which will be /CSS, not assets, because we're using the public path, right? So it's /CSS/styles.css. And then after that, we need to tell it that it is a style sheet. I actually don't fully understand what rel is for, but I know if you don't include it, it doesn't work. Do you know what rel's for?
Relation to your current document.
Oh, is that literally what it's for? Okay, cool. I did not know that. Incidentally, while we're in here, just out of curiosity, who's still typing just before I make this? Okay, cool. Just in home pug, the block globals, what's happening is it's going to take whatever content is inside the block globals and it's going to replace block globals with that content when this gets transpiled. So it's going to create a variable, JavaScript variable called title, and make it equal to the adventure of a lifetime. So if you want to change the text that winds up getting spit out on the page, that's the text you're going to change. Now, I'm using this as the title for the H1, but I can also use it as the title that goes in the top bar up here, so it doesn't say my home page. And the way I can do that is under main.pug, because this will be replaced with the variable declaration, all I need to do down here is modify this to title equals title. Now there's going to be an issue though. What happens when I attempt to access a variable that doesn't exist? Exactly, I get a reference error because the variable has not been declared yet. So if block globals is empty, then that variable declaration has never occurred, which means that is going to result in a reference error when I try to spit it out. So the way around that is we can use a ternary statement. I always like to put my ternaries in parentheses and define them all in the parentheses. So the first thing I'm going to do is say, hey, is there a variable called title? Which is literally a question. It's a good place to put a question mark. And if there is, deliver title then. Otherwise, signified by the colon operator, I do not have a title yet. Because everybody likes it when your app talks to you. I like to give things entitize things. I like to entitize things. Usually the cat and the dog make them sound like people. So that's awesome. I'm excited. We've got everything we want. Oh, actually, we're going to do one more thing. If you notice currently inside our page, oh, wow, cool. We've got an image. We're missing some stuff. What's that? You have an error. Okay, we'll address that in a second. Yeah, so some of you have an image with the text inside there, right? The adventure of a lifetime is a rainy day in Pizzaville. Okay. But you'll notice we actually have no way to navigate to the about or contact pages that we originally created. We can have a way. We can actually do it very simply. We can have a simple menu that actually links to those pages. And I'm not sure, but I thought we had created it. No, we didn't. We're missing our partials folder. So let's create a partials folder. So under the views folder, we're going to create a new folder called partials. And under the partials folder, we're going to create a new file called main-nav.pug. And I'm not sure if I actually, you know what, I'm going to give you the code for this. Just because it makes it a little simpler and it will look a little better. No, actually, we're going to do it slow style. Sorry, forgot it. So we're going to do UL, LI, A. Inside the A, we're going to put a set of parentheses so that we can declare this attribute, href, slash. The first one will just be slash, and at the end of it, we'll type in home. Then I'm going to duplicate those layers, or those two, or that element. Change this to about, and change this to contact. And save it. And that'll be our very basic navigation, which we'll upgrade in a bit. Okay. Is it just your inner dialogue going?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, take full advantage of copy and paste, right? Because you can make those pretty quick. Or not, you do you. So now that we have the main nav pug, we can actually make this like a partial, which means we can actually take this and include it in other files if we want to, so that we can put the nav wherever we want. The benefits of partials is that if I want to show this navigation to the common user, I can. And if I want to show a mid panel to a logged in user, I can show that as well, right? So I can actually put that logic that delivers a different partial based on a user's capabilities. So the way we actually use the partial is pretty simple. If you jump over to your main pug, just after body, above block content, you're going to type include ... /partials /main nav.pug and save it. And that will put the navigation just above our block of content. So every page will have that nav above it. And because the pug actually supports JavaScript logic, if we wanted to show that to just the common users, we can put an if condition above it and literally block it out if it's not necessary. All right, anybody still typing? Anybody need the main nav page still? Do you need the navigation back? Just this one? Cool. Just going to jump over to the browser, refresh, and you'll see a very unformatted, not so attractive list. The last thing before we take a small break, we're going to take JavaScript. We're going to take Bootstrap, my world's famous, lovely framework, and it'll be one of the major frameworks we'll be working with throughout our 14 weeks. We're going to dump Bootstrap in, and this whole thing is going to change a bit and look a lot nicer. So if you follow me on the internets into a Google search, we're going to search for Bootstrap CDN. And usually it's the top link, www.bootstrapcdn.com. And I love this site in particular because these little down arrows here, if you click them, it has a pug option. So it's the link already formatted in pug format. You just click on it, it immediately copies it to the clipboard for you. Okay? Who's still doing that process? Just so I know. Oh, okay, jump over to the IDE, and just above your style sheet where you put your style sheet, you're going to paste that link. And the reason why you're pasting it above your style sheet is that way if you want to modify any of the Bootstrap stuff, you can, right? Now, unfortunately, that's not it because we want to actually use drop-down menus. And in order to use drop-down menus, we're going to need Bootstrap's JavaScript chunk. So we're going to actually need two pieces. We need Bootstrap's JavaScript chunk, and we need its major dependency, which is jQuery. But Bootstrap 5 is coming, and it will be vanilla JavaScript, which is great. But for now, we need jQuery. To get jQuery, it's not too bad. Just jump over to the Googles. Type in jQuery CDN. It's code.jquery.com. I want the minified version so it's as small as possible. I'm going to copy this because if you click the stupid clipboard, it doesn't copy the whole thing properly. So I'm going to copy that. And then instead of you having to convert it to pug, we're going to go back to the Googles and we're going to look up online HTML to pug, like so. And you'll notice there's an html-to-pug.com website. And I'm sure you can guess what happens here. We paste in the HTML on one side, and on the other side, we scroll and get the pug. It's probably actually easier to just go bit, blit, and then we can get the pug on this side. Blit. Oh, it didn't do it correctly. Erg. There we go. I'm getting there. Much better. There we go. Yes, Lily. Yeah, copy it from jQuery, from this little block that you... What's that? So click minified, and then copy that script tag. Do it with your mouse, though. Don't click the little copy to clipboard button because it doesn't work. It seems to only copy the script part, and it misses a bunch of the syntax.
That's just the first one, but the second one on the list then?
I think it's second in the list. Yeah, it's second in the list, minified. Once you've copied that, you can go to the HTML to pug website, which is html-to-pug.com, or you can Google it. And once you've Googled it, you can paste the HTML on the left side, and on the right side, copy the script that shows up in the pug side. Then we can jump over to Visual Studio, and I'm actually going to paste that underneath the block content. That way that JavaScript doesn't block the loading of that page. And it looks like that. And then last but not least, now that we have jQuery, we can actually go grab the Bootstrap JavaScript piece that we need. And you will find that, again, in that Bootstrap CDN website. If you scroll down a little bit on that page, you'll see the complete JavaScript bundle. click the arrow, click on the pug option, jump back into your main.pug file, and paste it in place. That was a good sneeze. There's a lot of masculinity behind that sneeze.
That's a lot.
Who is it? We have a guy at our building that does that, and you can hear him through the whole building. Like, I mean, this is a 30,000 square foot building. You can hear the guy from one end to the other.
Imagine being beside him when he sneezes.
Oh my God. He wears these shoes. I've seen him, and I know it's this guy. It's got to be this guy. Connor and I were talking about him the other day. He wears these shoes that have toes.
Yeah. Those are sport boots.
I don't like them.
They're weird.
It freaks me out. It's like, if cats in the neighborhood go missing, I'm pointing at that guy.
He's got those weird toe shoes. Have you seen those?
He's got toe
Check out the guy with the
shoes.
toe shoes.
Thinks he's all nimbly pimbly. All right, why don't we take a break there? Actually, I'm sure you want to see what it did. So if you jump over to your browser and open up your application, wherever I put it, here it is, and refresh. Ta-da! It didn't do a heck of a lot. But it is going to. When you get back, I'll post the navigation code, and we'll populate the navigation code, the new one, and you'll have a really nice Bootstrap nav bar. All right, hold on 1 second. Let me pause, and then we'll do support.
Could you go back to main?
Okay, so I just loaded up onto Blackboard. If you go to week 4 of Blackboard, I've put a copy of the whole blog project. So if for some reason your blog is not working at all, you can download the blog project, replace your contents with that contents, and then everything should work just fine for you going forward. Okay. Otherwise, everybody needs to get the main nav pug. The main nav pug contains the updated version of the navigation with Bootstrap in it. And I can't explain it, but we'll do it another time when we have more time.
So right now, when you go to like about or contact page, it should be empty, right?
Yeah, they're probably just the title or something in it. And that's fine too. Doesn't really matter. It's a blank slate. You add your own stuff. All right, so yeah, make sure you click on main nav. And where you're going to put that is underneath that partials folder. You're going to basically go to your blog page. You're going to go to your views, partials, and you're going to save it and replace the main nav that's in there currently. So just click save, click replace, and it will switch it out.
So we have to replace ours. If you want to do
Yes, I want you to replace yours.
main nav.
I want you to replace your main nav with that one. Yeah.
Can you show me?
Oh, show you in the IDE? Yeah. Yeah, if you replace it, it should look like that. Nav dot and a whole bunch of other stuff. Basically, this is Bootstrap's nav module that I've plugged in just to make our nav look a little cleaner and a little nicer. Yes. So this is going to go underneath views, pages, or sorry, views, partials. Yeah, just views, partials.
Damn, Sean, that looks sexy.
I know, eh? I can't take credit though because it's Bootstrap. So it's under views. Here, I'll collapse some of these so you can see it's views, partials, main nav, and that's what you're replacing.
Sean. Should probably call you Gene as well now.
I'm the OG. the original gambler. Gangster? What? I couldn't think of a programming one.
Ooh.
All right. So Goggin's the OG, right? Because she's original Goggin. All right, I'm gonna just jump over and make sure everything's working. Just make sure I start up my application with NodeMon, not NodeMon, NodeMon, or npm start. hit refresh, and if everything is good, it should look like that. Kind of super modern looking. I mean, it doesn't take much. You just dump a big giant image in and then do that. Yep. You're not typing it out, are you?
No.
Okay.
I just wanted to look at the node mon thing that you just typed in.
Just nodemon.
I did
Do you have nodemon installed?
No, that's what I was supposed to do.
So it's npm
Install.
nodemon-g. So you get it globally.
Do you have to use install in there or just npm?
No, you have to do install. Yeah. If you want to do it shorthand, you can do npm I, like npm-i nodemon. Hopefully it goes in for you, but
npm install nodemon
-g, space -g, sorry. What's that? It's no daemon. Yeah. It depends on who you talk to, because if you talk to Connor, he says no daemon.
What am I typing in?
npm
You're typing in,
nodemon.
you're going to type in this, npm install no daemon -g. And I'm going to make that super big.
Sweet.
There.
Where you helped me with that last
I thought, yeah, we've done this before, you and I. We've installed this before.
We've done this before, you and
I don't remember when, but we did. It wasn't in this class, though. Were you doing node stuff in JavaScript class? I think you were.
I've
Possibly.
definitely done this.
All right. Okay, we are digressing. So if everything is good and you've got your server running, whether you have nodemon or whether you do npm start, you should see this now with the new updated menu. These blog links don't go anywhere yet because we are doing that today. We're creating that piece today. But home should go to home, about should go to about, only it will be blank. And contact should go to contact, only it will be blank. If you want those to have content, just copy and paste home.pug into those ones, and then you'll have content. It'll just be the same as everything else. All right. Let's get to what we were going to do. So this piece is going to take a bit of time. It always does. Anytime we have to set up environment variables and stuff like that, it always takes a bit of time. So what I want to do is I want to actually set up an MLab account with you. We're going to go through, create an MLab account, and then use MLab as our way to connect to Mongo. MLab is a Mongo provider, so they will actually provide us a Mongo database as opposed to us having to install Mongo locally. The first time I taught this class, we installed it locally, and it was an absolute train wreck because of permission issues, because different people have different permissions on their computers, and nobody really knows how to change those, and the idea of changing 42 laptops permissions is not very appetizing. So let's just do MLab anyways, because when you do work in a production environment, you'll be working with usually production and development databases that you'll connect to anyways. So it doesn't make a difference. Okay, cool. So to get there, you're going to go to mlab.com. MLab now actually is, I think it's been acquired by Atlas. So when we do this, we're actually going to wind up in Atlas. So go up through the sign up process. Enter your email, your first name, last name, and your password. Make sure you pay close attention to what you write as a password. It does give you an option to see it, right? So don't forget it though, because you'll need this password. Just so you're aware, this is not the password you'll be using to connect to the database though. So those of you that are in groups will be happy to hear that, because you can create a generic login for all of you in your group and not worry about people tampering with your actual account. And I'm not sure, I think you have to verify the email. So make sure you do that step. Once you've done that, click the login, or if it doesn't already log you in, it might already log you in. Oh, that's correct. Okay, maybe it isn't correct. Did I save it? I am on a different one. Right, I had to do this last week. I don't remember what it was though.
Didn't you just say how important it was to look after your password?
Shutty. I gotta go retrieve it. All right. hide so you hackers don't manipulate my stuff.
So when the email comes in and you click sign in, email, it takes you to MongoDB.atlas, right?
Yeah, I'll take you to mongodb.atlas. Come on. Or maybe I didn't create an account. No, I definitely created an account because I used it last week. Ah, I bet you any bit of money, Hotmail was like, yeah, that's junk. The code and then dot? Yeah, it definitely makes things easy. Okay, interesting. I've obviously used an email that I didn't realize I've used before. Alright, then I guess I'm going to sign up with a new one. This is really stupid. The header menu. Oh, yeah, I guess. Yeah, I didn't think of that. Yes, I can. Here, give me 1 second. Oh, come on. Maybe it gave me the username already. So interestingly enough, it's not just your email address. You need to remember your username because if you lose your username, it's very difficult to get it back. I asked them for the email response and they still haven't sent it. I had before, but I did it last on Monday. I had to do a new one because the interface has changed drastically. No, it's under this. It's definitely under this. Under Atlas. It's like literally not sending the email at all. Good job, MLab. Thanks for coming out. Okay. So it turns out you have to log in at mongodb.com because if you log in at MLab, it doesn't work. That's really annoying. All right, I'm ready. Okay, so when you first log in, it's going to ask you to create a cluster, I think. I need to see somebody's computer that's new on it.
Yeah.
Is it a cluster?
Build a cluster or
Yeah, you're going to be building a cluster. So you need to give your cluster a name, and everybody can call it COMP-2068 blog, I think. I mean, it seemed to work on Monday. Hopefully it still works now. I'll go through the same process. I'll build a new cluster with you.
yes.
Okay, so it's going to show you these providers. We're going to use AWS, North Virginia. Yeah, go away. And it's free tier. Don't worry about this number down here at the bottom. We're going to choose a cluster tier, and we're going to choose the free sandbox, which I can't choose because I already have one. It's free forever, but you only get one. So make sure you choose that. Yours won't look like this stuff. The additional settings, just leave it alone because it should just be free. And then your cluster name, that's where you're going to put the COMP-2068 blog. That's the name of your database. So cluster in this scenario is database.
So we could pretty much name it anything.
Yeah, if you want to. You're going to be cheeky, aren't you? Can totally tell.
No, I'm not that bad.
Right. All right, so it's AWS, North Virginia free tier. And you're going to choose the M0 sandbox, which is a micro AWS thing. And unfortunately, you only get one Mongo database. And it's only 512 megs. Well, we're not putting up images, so it should be good. Should be enough space. Once you're done and you've created it, you will wind up hitting this page here, where you have the database actually listed. Yeah. Yes? You can't select sandbox? Do you already have a cluster? But it's not letting you. Did you choose North Virginia? Did you choose AWS? Scroll up to AWS, Virginia, scroll down a little bit. Limit of one cluster. You have it. Did you have an account on your cluster? Okay, well, you have cluster 0. So your database is going to be called cluster 0. Not cluster 0. No. Once it's created, you can't rename it. And I don't think you can destroy it. You can terminate it. Goggin, you can terminate it. If you click the 3 little dots, you can terminate it and get rid of it and then create a new one. Or just leave it, because I don't know what terminate does. So it could be like one of those things that takes 24 hours to happen. So maybe do it later. All right, so once it's created, we actually need to create a user account, because your user account that you're using for this is not the account associated with it. So to create a new user for your database, you click on settings. Or no, security, sorry, not settings. Where the heck is security? Database access. There it is. Thank you, Steve. Click on database access, click add new user. And you can choose what kind of level of access they have. I don't recommend making members of your group Atlas admins. Just make them read and write to any database. That's it. You can only have one anyway, so unless you want to pay for it. Give it a username. Give it a password. And then you can even auto-generate your secure password, but make sure you click on show and look at it because you can't get the password afterwards. You have to create a new one. So if you forget it, you'll have to create a new one. So make sure you write it down. Well, copy and paste. I mean, we're not savages.
So we can put our own passwords in?
Yeah, you can put your own password in. You can either auto-generate one or put one that you want in. Once you've done that and you have your user account, go back to clusters, click on connect. It's just underneath the name of your database. So under the name of your database, there's a connect button. Click on connect, and the second option says connect your application. Yes.
Mine says you cannot connect yet. Yes.
Oh, is it still creating your user, or did you create a user?
You have to whitelist your connection.
Right, you have to whitelist your IP. My apologies. Sorry, if you go over to, is that under database access for whitelist?
It should just pop up right when you're doing it.
Yeah, follow the whitelist IP thing and click on it. But where is it, just out of curiosity?
Who knows?
That's weird. Oh, it's under network access. Right, because I called it Georgian shitty internet. So add IP address, and you can actually like select the IP address you are currently at. So what does that mean to you? It means that when you're at home, you won't be able to connect to this database because your IP address won't be whitelisted. Your app will be able to connect, but you won't be able to connect. So what you will need to do is whitelist your IP at home as well. Okay? And if you're on Rogers or Bell, those are usually dynamic IP addresses, which means they don't change very often, but every so often they do. So just keep that in mind. So once again, you're going to create a user, then you're going to jump over to network access or just follow the thing, the step-by-step thing, and whitelist your IP address. What? Jesus. Do you need some avocado on toast or what? Anyways, under clusters, under clusters, you should be able to click connect now, hopefully. And now you can click the connect to your application. Oh, not full driver. I don't know why I clicked that. I did not mean to do that. I meant to, this one. There you go. So it's going to give you one line. This copy button actually works. So if you click it, it will actually copy. Make sure you copy that and then put that somewhere. Put it in like a note in your notepad or something like that so you can keep track of that particular thing.
Is it the Mongo shell?
No, it's the application one. Yeah. We're just going to take small chunks of this URL and do something with it. All right. So this leads me into the whole idea of environment variables. A couple of weeks ago, I told you that we're going to be pushing everything to these wonderful public repositories, right? So the last thing in the world you want to do is take your database credentials and dump them into your public repository where the rest of the world gets to see how to connect to your database, right? So what we are going to do in order to avoid that is use something called environment variables. Environment variables are variables, just like variables you're used to using anywhere, that exist on your machine in your environment. And it's not even just your machine, it's like down to the user account on your machine. So if you're logged in as Mo on your machine, any environment variable you set will be only available to Mo. And then if Swapana, is that what it is? Yes. If you log in as Swapana and then you go in there, every variable will only be available to him, right? And so it's right down to the actual user account itself. So keep that in mind that this means that what we have on our systems as set environment variables, we will also need to duplicate on Heroku because Heroku will not have those environment variables yet, but we will do that next week, okay? So this week we're actually not going to push. Next week we will push, okay? And we'll go through that process. So to set environment variables sounds super complex. Sounds like it's going to be a big process. It's actually not that bad because we're going to use a node module that makes our lives very easy. Some of you may have already used it in other applications because this library is available in almost every single framework out there. It's called .env. It's very popular. So we're going to install that first. So open up your terminals so that you have your terminal open. And we are going to install .env in here by doing npm install .env. Yeah, no dots. No actual dot, like the word dot. Don't put a dot because it won't install. Once you've done that, go ahead and hit enter. And it takes like no time, and it should be installed. What about Gucci? You can actually create your own npm packages. So Connor has one.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, so if you like npm install Connor Minley or whatever, it actually comes up with a message and stuff. I'll get the thing and I'll give it to you guys. You can install it. You can install the Connor package.
Oh god, I don't want to install the Connor.
All right, so we've npm installed .env. Anybody still actually going through that process? No? Okay, so there's another step to this. We actually have to create a new file as well. And a lot of people got tripped on this last week. What I want you to do is make sure you've closed all the folders in your sidebar. This file has to exist at the root of your file system, right? So at the root of your app. At the root of your app, you're going to create a new file, and it's going to be called dot, like the literal period, .env. So like the actual dot. Yeah, the icon. So that's step 2. And then obviously because we don't want to take our credentials and post them to the repository, we are going to add the .env to our gitignore so it gets ignored when we do our pushes, right? So once you've created the .env file, you're going to jump over to gitignore or create gitignore if you don't have it. It's just a file called .gitignore.
Sorry, where'd you put that EMV file?
At the same level as your gitignore and your app.js. So right at the root of your application. What? That's right. You're speaking. What are you speaking? Gibberish? Gibberish that sounds like a European accent? All right. And anyways, in your gitignore, it's just the name of the file, .env.
You also have node module.
I do. So if you don't have node modules, you should put it in there. Like, I mean, you can push your node modules up to Git, but at some point you're going to reach the cap for the repository, and it's going to get mad at you. So it's better just not to push those. So once we've done this, we're actually ready to start adding our environment variables, and we define them in the .env file. They look like constants usually. You don't have to write them as constants. That just tends to be the common practice. We've already actually used a .env variable before. We've used an environment variable before. Does anybody remember what environment variable we've used? We did it on our second day.
We used the port.
The port, exactly. The process.env accesses our environment variables, and we use .port, the property that was on that. So all of our environment variables will be accessible through process.env. Whatever we call them, they will be accessible. Now, the lesson plan says to call it username and password. However, we found out on Monday that's not a good idea because echo $username Sean McKinnon. Turns out it's already an environment variable. So on Mac, no issue. Mac was like, cool, I'll use the .env and it will override your current environment variables you have. If you're on Windows, however, Windows is like, no, no, you're not doing that. You're using the environment variable that already exists, which is likely not what you called your user account on MLab. So What we will do to get past that is we'll use db underscore username and db underscore password so that they're unique. Okay. So anyways, jump back over. I will correct that actually because I can now, but in here we're going to create a db underscore Yuri, a db underscore, let's just call it user, just to be unique, and a db underscore pass. So there's our 3 variables. So environment variables are allowed to be equal to 2 different data types only. That is strings and numbers, and that is it. You cannot make them equal to anything else. So we're going to make all of these equal to strings. I hold down Command and I click in the 3 spots. You can hold on. I tried it with Control or Alt. Probably Alt because I tried Control and it broke. Yeah. Under db Yuri, we're going to take that address that you just got and we're going to paste it under the db Yuri spot. So I forget what mine was. So we need to go grab it from MLab. After I told everybody to write it down, I totally forgot what it was. Copy it. Jump back over to here. And I'm going to paste it underneath just because I'm going to grab certain pieces of it. The first piece I'm going to grab is this part, the MongoDB plus srv : / and I'm going to paste that into the db Yuri. And then the second piece I'm going to grab is everything after the @ symbol, not the @ symbol though, just everything after it. And I'm going to paste that as the second part. Do not copy mine because you won't be able to connect to it. Just do yours. Once we've done that, we can actually delete the paste. Okay, so it's MongoDB plus srv, and then everything that was after your @ symbol. Next, you need to type in your username, right? So mine is Sean McKinnon.
Is that the username that we created?
Yep, for your database, not your login. So not your Atlas login, it's your database username. It's important to remember that. And then under your password, you're going to put your password, and haha, no way.
No, please,
I'll wait and I'll hide it and I'll put it in, and then I'll close it out. And then that's it. You're going to save that. Okay. All right. Let me hide my image just for a second because I've actually got to populate it real fast. Oh, right. I think I did know this. New window. Well, say one thing I don't like about VS Code, you can't just easily open another folder without it closing the original folder and opening the new folder. I don't really like that feature. Never mind. Yeah, I definitely need to change that password and login. That's ridiculous. All right. Cool. So you should have your .env file now, and it should be published with everything that's in it that you need. Now, next, we're going to go to app.js. And we're actually ready to add the .env to our app so that it is available to us. And we add it actually at the top of our app. I just need to look up what the thing looks like because I forget. All right, here it is. So we're going to add it at the very top before Express. And it's going to be require .env and .config, which will execute the configuration. So what that will essentially do is it will take the .env file you created and it will properly echo out those variables directly to your operating system and install them for you so that they're available every time you boot your app. So I mean, while we're in here, the whole purpose of this is so we can actually connect to the Mongo database, right? So why don't we finish up that step as well? The first piece we need to do is actually install the Mongo database. 1 second. It's very dry in this classroom. All right, let's install the Mongo database. So we're going to do that in our terminal. Type in npm install mongoose. That's the name of the application we're using to deal with our Mongo database and also be able to create something called models. And then we hit enter, and that's going to take a few seconds to install. Yeah, npm install mongoose. Okay. Right, it's not uninteresting, I guess. Or disinteresting? Misinterested? I don't know. All right, so once you've installed that, now we can actually utilize it. We're going to do all this right underneath .env. I'm going to create two things. Mongoose and end mongoose. So it's easy to know where all of our mongoose logic is going. These mice are really touchy, and the little thingy that allows you to scroll easily with the middle mouse button pops up immediately. No, it's fine. I can't anyways because it's in through and you don't like it, eh?
It's one of the shop mice.
Oh, okay.
Because I forgot mine for this.
Which are likely not the most expensive mice in the world. Yeah.
This is like a crappy logic.
So the first step is we're going to actually require our library. So const mongoose equals require mongoose, right? So now we've got the library available to us. The next piece we're going to do is call a function on mongoose. It's a method available to it called connect. So we're going to do mongoose.connect. I'm sure you can guess what it does. Give that man a prize. And this is where we're going to use our first environment variable, right? So our URL that we had, I know it's so exciting. Don't worry, don't be nervous. So it's process, right? Preferably spelled correctly. Process.env. So it's process is a global variable, global object that Node creates immediately. There's a whole bunch of information on process, and it comes in really handy. env is all the environment variables you're going to use, okay? And then the name of the environment variable. So db Yuri is the environment variable that we created before. So Mongoose will go ahead and connect to that. However, our database is going to come back and say, cool, dude, who are you exactly? Right? So we need to be able to authenticate ourselves. So we're going to authenticate ourselves by passing in the second argument to connect, which is an object that's going to contain keys and values that basically describe who we are. So just put an empty object in there for right now. Once you've done that, go ahead and put your cursor in the middle of those two braces and hit enter so it creates a nice little gap underneath. The first key we're going to create is called auth, which is the authentication credentials for the database. And auth is going to be equal to a object for its value. And while we're doing that, we're just going to press a comma, leave that object empty, press comma, and then underneath that you're going to do use, not user, use new URL parser true. And the reason why we're doing that is because this library actually supports a deprecated version and the newer version, and we need to use the newer version in order to handle our Atlas URLs. Otherwise, things break. Once you're done that, put your cursor inside that object that we created beside auth and hit enter to create some nice space. And we're going to type in user. And this is going to be equal to process.env.db user. And then the next one will be comma after that, and the next key is password, colon, and it's equal to process.env.db pass. Mongoose actually will throw an error if it can't connect. And so we can actually utilize that and do a catch the error, and then spit it out to our console so we know what's going on. Now this catch is the same catch that you've seen before because it's the one that's attached to promises. Mongoose actually returns back a promise, so we're not going to do the then side of it, we're only going to do the catch side of it. So in order to do that, we just type in .catch after the closing bracket on it. And then, we've got ES6 available to us. We're in Node. Down with standard boring functions. Let's use some arrow functions, right? Because they're more fun. That's right. We're hardcore. So we're going to type error with a hash rocket. I've adopted it. I'm going to say it from now on. Hash rocket. I like it too. And then we're going to return console.error, some dirty backticks, the word error in big bold letters. Some nice string interpolation in there, and the variable. Gucci? Gucci, Gucci, Goo. Did you ever see that Vanity Fair with Nick Offerman and Kirsty, can't remember her name. They played in It Might Get Loud.
No.
It was a really good movie. Anyways, Hearts Beat Loud. Sorry, not It Might Get Loud. Confusing two different things. Anyways, she's a millennial, and Nick Offerman's he was in Parks and Rec and stuff, right? He's older. Anyways, he's so she would say a millennial word, and he'd try to guess what it is, and one of them was Gucci, and he was like, Gucci, Gucci, Goo, and he kind of tickled her. It was pretty funny. All right, so that gives us Mongoose. The idea is that we should be able to now connect to our MLab instance and be able to access our Mongo database for writing and reading and all the rest of that wonderful fun stuff. However, we need to test this, so if you jump over to your terminals, anybody still typing that out just before I switch over? No? Okay, so switch over to your terminal. Start your server with npm start or no daemon, or restart your server if it's already running and you did it with npm start. And if everything is good, you will see listening on 4000 and you won't see an error. If you have an error, there's a few different reasons why that could be, like that error right there. So this one says console error is not a function, so it looks like I typed something wrong. So I have a syntax error. Yep, sure enough, I have console.error. It's actually error.
Well, the arrows the same thing, but I didn't get an error.
You didn't get an error? Then you must have typed console.error instead of error. Did you? What did I type? Ah. Oh, really? Yeah, so I actually have a connection error. So let me see if I can retry just to make sure that it's not anything goofy. Yeah, so connection 5 to COMP-2068 block shard, blah, 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 is closed for whatever reason. So it might be a IP address issue.
So I shouldn't really change anything on mine because I didn't get that error.
Yeah, don't change anything on yours. I'm going to create a new user real fast. No, I'm not. Why would I create a new user?
Might be the whitelisted IP.
I think it's the whitelisted IP is the issue. Yeah. I'm probably on a different area. Another crappy Georgian IP. Doesn't even deserve capitalization. Yep. It's a different IP address. Let's try that again. I think we're good. We're good. What, with the actual error? Like switching this to error? Yeah, so it's not going to call, and the reason is do you know why, actually? Out of curiosity, do you know why it did it the first time and it doesn't do it the second time? What is catch doing?
It's catching if there's connected.
Catches if there's an error.
Yeah.
So if you connect successfully, is there an error?
No.
So is this ever going to fire?
No.
No. Exactly. So that's why. So if you have .err in there, it will give you an error, and that error if it doesn't connect because it will throw back an error, right? So just keep that in mind. Okay. Can we just power through? Because we did like a 25-minute break nearly, and we're like behind a bit. Okay, cool. I appreciate that. What? No break, yeah, no break.
So I was wondering, how did it display the error even though it was ERR? Okay.
So it did blow up,
Yeah.
and
But
so
it was console.err.
yeah. So what happened was Catch caught it,
Yeah.
and then was trying to execute the callback function, but the callback function was broken. So when it went to execute it, it actually threw a new error, but not the connection error. It threw the syntax error instead.
It's from the library's console, I guess, right?
Exactly, yeah, because I tried to access a property or a method that doesn't exist. Yeah. Okay, cool. So that's our setup there. Just because we're already in this file and I want to do a lot of jumping back and forth, we're going to actually put our body parser in. What body parser does is when you send requests from the internet, when a user sends a request, in the request there's usually a body. Yeah, there's usually either a post body if they've done it through post, or there's a query message if they've done it through the URL. Query messages, query parameters are usually the ones you see where you see a question mark equals the name of a variable and then it's equal to a value, and it's all in one big long line. Like, I mean, run any Amazon product, click on any Amazon product, and you will see like 200 plus characters of just query string, right? Post bodies are a little bit cleaner. They're usually in a JSON kind of format. But the problem is when that stuff actually goes back to our server, it's just text. It's just flat text that gets sent back. It's not in a nice object that we can actually use or do anything with. We need something to translate that into an object. So what we're going to use is something called body parser. Now, interestingly, body parser used to be just already there, and you didn't even know about it. It was abstracted from you. It just worked. It was a part of Express. For some reason, they separated it out for a short time. You had to install it separately. Now it's again a part of the Express package, but it isn't just immediately available. You have to require it and actually work with it. So it's kind of annoying, but suffice it to say, it just makes parsing all that information a lot easier. Now this needs to go a little further down in our application, so we're going to put it right after our app, right? Because it actually uses our app to connect to. We don't need to do it with path. Yeah, we'll do it right here. So we're going to go enter, enter. And we'll say body parser. And then we'll end the body parser so you can at least see where the body parser logic starts and the body parser logic ends. And just like Mongoose, the first little piece we're going to do is actually require body parser. And like I said, we don't need to install it. It already came with Express. So we're going to do const body parser equals require the body parser. Once we have the library, we actually need to register it to our application. So we're going to do app.use body parser.json. Whoops. There we go. So that's going to actually use the body parser, and the format, it's going to format our query strings and body parameters into is JSON structure. Now, interestingly enough, that will only actually cover post bodies. In order to cover the query strings, we need to do app.use body parser .url encoded, and url encoded is a function. And then it takes one argument, and that's an object, so I'm just going to give it an empty object. And it has one key we're going to use, which is extended and true. And incidentally, I don't remember all this stuff. I have to look it up every time I create an Express app, because it's not something you're just going to remember. So don't feel bad if you're like, I'm never going to remember this. Like, I don't understand what all this stuff is doing. That's totally perfectly normal. That's a normal reaction to frameworks in general. I mean, like, I've used Rails for 5 years, 6 years now, and I don't have a clue everything it does, because it does so many things, right? Does it? Yeah, so, like, don't feel bad at all. A lot of the time, what you're going to find yourself doing is jumping back to your COMP-2068 course and copying this file out and pasting it because it's a good starting point. So, like, yeah, don't feel bad at all. And a lot of this stuff, once it's done, and we won't be in app.js after a certain point for quite a while because we just don't need to add anything else. Okay, so that gives us the body parser. That's all installed, and we're now ready to use the body parser with our actual requests. So let's do the next pieces. Let's see. We have to create a bunch of views, and I feel kind of bad about this because we had to do this on Monday as well. I'm just going to get you to copy and paste the view logic. Yeah. What? Really? I should get the same error. URL encoded is not a function, is what I'm getting. It's possible it's been changed. That's weird, though, that it was changed. What's that?
It's not capital E.
Yeah.
Oh, it's not?
JC by accident, but it works.
All right, let's try that. Let's try it without a capital E. Oh. You know what's interesting is that code is the exact code that I copied on the weekend, but then I've updated the, they've changed it. They've changed it literally in 2 days. Cool. Nice catch, thank you. Yeah, so the E in encoded is not capital, it's lowercase, so please make sure it's lowercase in your app.js file. We didn't make it very far, Virginia.
That's all right.
Yeah.
I already did it wrong. Right way.
Oh, okay, cool. What's that?
It's quite confusing. They usually do camel casing.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, like, I have it written down, and I literally copied the code from, oh, no. No, I'm an idiot. So in here, it's with a lowercase. It's me. Yeah. It's me trying to automatically camel case things that shouldn't be camel case. But you're right. And I hate that, too, when people aren't consistent.
Yeah.
That's annoying, yeah. It's one of my biggest, like, faults with PHP is their consistency. Lack of consistency. All right, cool. So what I'm going to get you to do is we're going to just copy the views. I think what I'll do on the weekend is I'll put out a video about those views because there's logic in there that I want you to see, but I'll put it out as a separate video because we're going to run out of time either way. So we'll copy the views for now so that we have them, and that way everything's in. Is everybody done with this file, just out of curiosity? Yeah? Okay, cool. Let's close it off just so you can easily see my sidebar here. We're going to create a new folder at the root of our application. So I'm going to create a new folder. New folder. Nope, not in there. Stupid thing. Oh, having difficulty actually creating a new folder. I'll have to use these little icons. New folder. There we go. Nope, sorry, I'm wrong. It's under views. New folder under views. My apologies. It's been a very long day. And we're going to call it blogs. And you'll remember in pages that we created each of our resource names in the pages. We're going to do the same kind of thing in blogs. Only this is where we're going to fall
follow the whole resource routing paradigm a little bit more closer. We only need to actually create 3 views. The one view that we're going to create is to handle so that we can show all of the blogs in our system currently. Does anybody remember what that view will be called? We talked about it a little bit at the beginning. Anybody want to guess? You already know. What's it called, Daniel? Index. And then I want to see one blog, just one. What view is going to handle that one blog?
Show.
Exactly. And then I want to create a brand new blog, and I need a view with a form, and that's going to be called, do you know?
Are you doing new or add?
New. We're going to do new. So three files, and you can go ahead and add those. Those are index.pug, show.pug, and new.pug under the blogs directory. So new.pug, new file, index.pug, and show.pug. Ali says the pug icon looks like a ruby, and she's not wrong. It does look like a ruby. If you look really close, it looks like a pug. Otherwise, it looks like the, what do they call them? The little, things. Facets. That's it, the facets. But it's a little bulldog. You thought it was a ruby too? Yeah, I know. Everybody thinks it's a ruby. Okay, so once you have those 3 files, we'll go ahead and copy the logic, the view logic, from our lesson plan. So make sure you have your lesson plan open. Lesson plan. Dun, 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 dun. All right, and they are towards the bottom. SQL, Mongoose, further resource routing, routes. Blog model, the views, there you go. You can even do a Command F or Control F and type in our views and hit enter till you get to that one. And it will say views blogs index.pug, or just search views blogs index.pug. That also works. So the first one we'll copy is this index view. So just highlight it, Command C or Control C on your keyboard. And then jump over to your IDE, make sure you're under index.pug and paste it in place and save it. Once you've done that, go back to the lesson plan, scroll down a little further and you'll see show pug. Highlight it, copy it. Views, blogs, show.pug. Jump back over, make sure you open show.pug and paste it in place. And that will paste our show. And then last but not least, we'll copy new. And new is quite a bit bigger because it contains the form that we're going to use to be able to create our blogs. Now, while I've got new kind of just sitting there on the screen, I will explain one thing just in case you've never seen this before. So input is the tag input, just like you would create any input form element, right? Form control is the class name, so it's a CSS style name. Everything that goes inside the brackets are attributes, okay? Required is lazy form validation, really. It's because it triggers the form validation in Chrome for us. Cool, whatever, right? But this piece might be new to some of you. So what this is doing is it actually says, I've got a form element. Its value is going to be stored in blog title. So what Express is going to do is it's going to create an object called blog, and blog is going to have a property now called title. The convenience of that is I now have blog.title, blog.content, and blog.status, all within this object. That becomes a lot more beneficial when we actually go to write the blog record or the document to the database, because we just give it an object and it just literally spits it into the database for us, which we'll see. But I wanted to point it out before we just move on. So make sure you've copied that whole thing. Under views, blogs, new.pug, jump over to your IDE, go to new, paste, save. So you should have 3 views all together: new, index, and show. Cool. So because we're doing resource routing, there's a few pieces we need. We're going to need a controller, right? So let's create a brand spanking new controller. So I'm going to open up my sidebar. I'm going to go to controllers. I'm going to right click on it and choose new file. And we're going to create blogs with an S. So important you put the S in there, please. Controller with no S. .js. So blogs controller. Getting to that point where you say blogs so many times it starts to lose its meaning. It's blogs. Just sounds weird now.
Sounds like a frog.
Does blog frog. We're going to stub out this file to just its very basics. We are going to create the 7 actions, controller actions that this is going to do currently. And those 7 actions that it's going to do are exports.index. So that will show our index view. And then because all 7 actions follow the same structure as that, you can literally 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Duplicate it 7 times. Because they're all identical. Stop that. It's just 7 times. And then we're going to replace out these words. So the second one will be show. The third one will be drafts, which we'll see later. The fourth one will be published. I think I missed one. Index, show, drafts, published, new, and create. I was wrong, there's 6. I thought there was 7, but there's 6. Can't count, math is hard. Just kill it for now. It's definitely going to crash. We've got too many things going that it's like I have no idea what any of this stuff is yet because we haven't actually plugged everything in.
Now, just out of curiosity, does the order of what you just put in there matter?
No, not in the controller, but it will matter in the router. But in the controller doesn't care.
Does I go by your order?
Sure, if you want. Or maybe you don't like that order. Maybe you want it to be alphabetical. I really don't care. It's totally up to you. At the top of our file, we actually want to include something that's very important to our blogs controller. This is a resource controller that we're working with, and we're going to have a resource that we're going to read and write to. That resource is going to be called a model, and our model's name is going to be blog, right? See, and it's totally lost its meaning now. Now it just sounds like a villain or something. So we're going to actually include blog into the blog controller so that it has access to that model. And we haven't created this file yet or the folder or anything, so if your application's running and you've linked up this controller, it will break. So it's const blog with a capital B equals require, and the string is ... / models / blog. And then that's our model inside our controller. Thanks. So now because we have the controller there and we have the controller actions there, I'm ready to actually add the model. So in order to do that, we need to create a models folder at the same level as controllers and assets and all that. And then inside there, we're going to create a blog.js file, which will contain our schema for our model. So I'm going to right click or figure out how to create a folder. There we go. Nope, not there. But stop putting breakpoints.
Think that it's going to go there directly.
No, it did go there. And now things are not working out the way I wanted to. All right. There's controllers. Okay. I need it down here at like this level. Yeah. There. Now I'll create the folder. Cool. Models. Models is at the same level as assets and controllers. It's at the root of your app. Yeah. And then I'm going to right click and choose to create a new file. And the new file, I don't know why that's open. The new file is going to be called blog.js. Yep, all meanings gone. Yes. Where did I create the blog? Models. So models gets created, the folder models gets created at the same level as assets and controllers. And then inside there, you're going to create a blog.js inside that folder. No worries. We're doing things a little bit out of sync here, but that's totally fine. So the model file, its real purpose is basically to describe your model. It describes your model to the application and says, here is how this model is used. What the purpose of the model is to basically describe things like the attributes that you're using, or fields if you want to translate it into what you have with a relational database, their data types, any actual pieces like their lengths, their min lengths, stuff like that if you want to do that, and it's like a string. Validation, so whether or not it's required, not required, whether it's unique or not unique, that kind of thing. You can also define whether something is an enum. There's a lot of different pieces. There's also a lot of different data types because not only do you have the major 7, string, number, boolean, object, array, you also have, sorry, this is major 5, you also have any you've created. So blog schema that we're going to create right now is actually becomes a data type, and we can actually make other tables use blog schema as a data type, meaning that the value that goes into that column must be a blog schema. But we'll look at that more next week when we actually start adding authors to our blogs. So the first piece we need to do is actually include, not over there, include Mongoose in our blog.js file. After we've done that, we're going to write our schema. So the first piece is to create a variable for our schema. So generally the common naming convention is to name it the name of your model and then follow that with the word schema. So it's blog schema. And that's going to be equal to a new mongoose.schema, which takes an object as an argument. Before we actually populate the schema, we'll just do the last piece, which is where we actually export our schema out. And that looks like this. It's module.exports equals mongoose.model. The first argument is the name of the model, so blog. And then the second argument is the schema, which is blog schema. Now that we have that in place, we're actually going to populate our schema. The first set of keys in our schema is the attributes or fields, right? So when we take a look at Mongo and we compare it to a relational database, the terminology changes a little bit. When we talk about fields in a relational database, that's our column names, right? Those are our field names. When we talk about that inside Mongo, we call them attributes. Okay. When we talk about brain stopped working. When we talk about a record in a SQL database, that's like a row in a database, right? That's a record in a SQL database, but in Mongo we call them documents. Our tables in a SQL database are called collections in Mongo. Now I will interchange back and forth because I tend to. I will try to use the Mongo terminology as much as possible so you get used to it. But if you ever forget, just ask me and I'll let you know. However, there is a handy table in this lesson plan that shows you what they are. And database is database is database is database. So that one's easy. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is our attributes or fields, right? So title, it's going to be equal to an object. Content, and it's going to be equal to an empty object. And status, which will be equal to an empty object. Now, interestingly enough, for a schema, that is valid. That is literally all you need. You don't need to populate it with anything else. That is totally fine. Because Mongo, like I said, it doesn't care. It's super easygoing. It's totally relaxed. It's chill. And if you don't want to call it a string, it doesn't have to be a string. It'll just pick up what data type it is when it gets inserted because it doesn't care. And that's how all those fields will actually work. But we want to actually create a little bit of rigidity and actually add some data typing and some requirements validation and stuff so that we can actually rely on the data that's going into our document, right? So title, we're going to give it a type, and we're going to make it a string. And we're going to add just the simplest of validation. We're going to say required, and that is true. And that will be our validation. Which means when a person attempts to add a new document, a new blog document, it has to have a title. And the title has to be a string. If they try to put it in an array or an object or a Boolean or a number, either it will cast it to a string automatically and insert it as a string, or it will blow up and tell you it's the incorrect data type. Under content, I don't really care if the person has content yet because they might be just doing a draft blog, so they might not have content quite yet. I do care that it's a string because it'll be likely either HTML format, more than likely it'll be HTML format. But I can say required false, or I can leave it blank because it's already implicitly required false. Under status, I want to make status choosable. I want to be able to force the values that the user actually selects because I want to be able to use status as a way to look things up, right? So I have two statuses that I care about with blogs. I care about drafts and I care about published. So when a draft is in draft mode, it means I'm not delivering it as a public document yet, right? I'm going to keep it hidden from public eyes and only let the author be able to see it and use it and edit it, right? Once it's published, now it's ready for public eyes and I can actually deliver it as a public document. So in order to force those two values, I'm going to use something called an enum. It's a glorified cool word for array, really, at the end of the day. And that's actually what it stores as an array. However, type works kind of differently. It's more like when you in Java decide to define an array and you have to state its data type. That's more what type works like in this scenario. So first we say type string, which defines what the array is going to be populated with. Then we say enum, and we give it an array of values that are plausible. So draft and published. So those are the only values the user has access to.
Are they case sensitive?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. And then last, this is the first time we've used this, we're going to create default, which will basically populate it with a default value if they don't choose one. And I mean, logically, what should the default value be? Draft or published? Right, because you don't want to publish it accidentally. It makes more sense to just have it automatically go to draft. So we'll do default. And make sure you put draft in capital letters, because it has to be the same as the enum value. Now, for those of you that have worked with model view controller systems, yes, Mo?
Sorry to interrupt. So the default is being, it kind of acts like required as well, right?
Acts like what?
Required, false, or required.
Yeah, it's just a property. Yeah. So some of you have worked with frameworks, model view controller frameworks. I know you guys did ASP.NET. Mo's getting into Laravel. Daniel and I built a model view controller system called Sparky. We both worked in Rails before. Some of you have worked in like CodeIgniter and stuff like that. So one thing that you may have noticed is that all of those things use ODMs, which are called object data mappers, or ORM, sorry, object relational mappers. Essentially what they are is they're a way to communicate with your database. And that's what Mongoose is. It's a way for us to communicate with our database, run queries on our database in a very simplified, easy way. One thing a lot of these database query systems will do is fill auto fields for you. So ORMs generally will give you IDs immediately. So you don't create an ID field like you would if you were to build it on your own. It will automatically create an ID field and insert that value into the ID field for you. So Mongoose does the same thing. Every time we create a new document, Mongoose is immediately going to create a unique ID and insert it into the document. Actually, in fact, it goes deeper than that. Mongo does that. That's a natural thing of Mongo. The other thing we have the ability to do that is Mongoose more related is create timestamps. So think about it. Every single time you create a document, you want to know, you should keep track of when that document was actually created, right? So using timestamps, we can actually keep track of when the document was created. In addition to that, we can also keep track of when the document was last updated, right? So we can actually see the last time the person switched from draft to published. And if they say, well, I don't remember when I switched it, it might be the last edit they did on the document, right? Or they can see the last edit they did, stuff like that. So we can keep track of that information. The way we do that is we pass a second argument to our block schema, to our blog schema. So this is currently our first argument. The second argument comes after that curly brace, and it is also an object. So do comma and another object. And once we've done that, we'll hit enter to open that object up. And to add timestamps to our blog, it's very simple. It's just timestamps, colon, true. And then that tells Mongoose to assign a timestamp to every blog entry we create, which is pretty cool. I think we're going to wind up only getting the model built, and then we'll have to actually do the connections in the controller at the beginning of the next class, which is totally fine. I'll build the class so it's a little shorter. So the last piece is, right now we are building with, do I want to show that yet? No. No, only because these two pieces will be confusing until we do our first blog query. So I don't want to do that. It's a good show, Steve. It's a good suggestion. And Virginia. Yeah. Got to award credit where credit is due, right? All right, so that creates our blog model. And yeah, I really feel like creating a controller action is just going to confuse things. So let's just hold off. At the beginning of next class, we will create our routes, then our controller actions, and we'll match it all up. What we will attempt to do at the end of next class, by the end of next class, is be able to CRUD a blog, which means we'll be able to create, read, update, and delete a blog. We will have, how many? 9 controller actions, all fleshed out, ready to go. We'll be able to filter our blogs by the end of next class. Sounds like a lot, but it's actually not. It should go pretty quick. What's that? This code? I can. Do you want me to push it up? Yeah, I can push it.
Might as well. We keep so far.
All right. Like, you want me to push it with you? All right. We won't merge it into master because it will break Heroku.
Oh yeah.
Because it's not done yet.
Okay.
But why don't we push it up to the branch?
Okay.
Are you ready, bro?
Yes.
All right. So let's do git status, and we should be able to see everything that is currently changed. I mean, we changed a lot of files. There's a lot of files that are changed. So we'll just add it in one block. So we'll do git add dot, and that will add them all in one go. That will stage them all. Not done yet, though. We stage. What do we do after we stage? We commit to it. We make a commitment. Git commit -m. I do love the enthusiasm, though. Yeah. I'm going to say part of part 3 because we're not done yet. And then when I hit enter, it's going to go ahead and add all of those to our local repository. Before we push, we always, that's right. I mean, it should already be up to date because we haven't done anything to this yet, but just in case, good habit to get into. And then we're going to do a git push. And enter, and that's going to condense, compress, connect to remote, jam the whole thing up there, and then unpackage it when it's up.
I don't know why I keep having a hard time saying that not doing this part. The whole get part. So like
Git add, git commit, git pull, git push.
Should this be willing to run yet? Mine's still set. It's like
It might run. I don't know what will happen if I run it.
crashed.
Mine's running. I mean, it's working. I can go to home. I can go to about. But if I attempt to go to a new blog, yeah, it cannot get blogs new because we don't have the route. But it's not crashing.
Mine's crashing.
Yours is crashing and burning? Okay. That's fine. We'll deal with it next time.
If you get,
If you come a little earlier, I could totally get it working before we start class.
Things later, that's like my favorite thing.
Okay.
I'm all down.
if it says no configured push destination, what does that mean?
That means you don't have that currently connected to your remote.
Because I switched a bunch of files.
You may have overwritten your Git file that currently connects to your remote.
I'm not terribly worried about it.
Nope, it's actually very easy to fix that.
Awesome.
So go to your GitHub,
Check. On there?
open that repository,
Yeah.
go to clone or download and copy that address.
Check.
Jump over to your terminal.
Check.
Make sure you're in that folder.
Yep.
Or sorry, yes, that folder. And it's git, hold on, don't actually do this yet. Remote. Yes, git remote add, and then paste that in. Git remote add origin, and then paste that paste.
And then override all the things.
And then, yeah, you would override all the things.
Oh.
If it has any suggestions, just override them.
It's git remote.
Add origin, and then paste your actual thing.
Forget that you post
Why are you buffing?
If it doesn't say anything.
Then it's good. It's just do it. And then go ahead and try to do a git push, and it should go up. Actually, do a git pull first, Virginia, and then a push.
you lift, bro.
You haven't left, bro.
Sean, are the quizzes worth much? I keep forgetting about it.
1%. I'll probably do what I usually do in the week before the midterm. I'll reopen them all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sean.
Okay, hold on. Let me stop this stupid video because otherwise we'll be